All right, buckle up, because today we're marching into a deep dive on Sun Tzu's Art of War. You know, that book constantly quoted by everyone from like CEOs trying to crush it in the boardroom to coaches drawing up game plans.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how a book written centuries ago still holds so much weight. Like, it really makes you think about how timeless those ideas about strategy really are.
Absolutely. But here's where things get a little, well, mysterious. I mean, we
Yeah.
all know about the Art of War's wisdom and all, but did you know its origins are honestly kind of murky?
It's true. The traditional story, the one you usually hear, is that Sun Tzu was this brilliant general working for King Hou. We're talking like around the 5th century BC. And there are mentions of him in some historical records. The Shiji, for example, kind of like an ancient Chinese encyclopedia of history, you could say.
Okay, so case closed, right?
Yeah.
Sun Tzu, military genius, wrote the book on strategy. End of story.
Well, not quite. There's this other piece of the puzzle we have to look at. It's called the Zhuozhuan. Basically, it's another historical record, a chronicle from around the same time as the Shiji. And this is but a lot of scholars see it as a much more reliable source than the Shiji, more trustworthy.
Oh, okay, I see where you're going with this. So
Like,
what does this more trustworthy Zhuozhuan have to say about Sun Tzu then?
get this, it doesn't mention him. Not once. Not even a little footnote.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously. And that's the really weird part. We're talking about a text that goes into detail about even like minor historical figures. You'd think if Sun Tzu was this big-time general, this strategic mastermind, he would have at least gotten a shout out, right?
You'd think so. So now we have one book saying Sun Tzu's out there commanding armies and changing the game, and another one acting like he's, well, non-existent. So what are the arguments then, for and against him actually being, a real dude?
Let's start with the case against Sun Tzu. The folks who are skeptical, they point to that Zhuozhuan silence as a huge red flag. They say, look, it makes way more sense if the Art of War wasn't written by one guy.
No.
More likely, it was a collection of military wisdom, maybe passed down and polished over generations. And eventually, someone slaps Sun Tzu's name on it because he's like this legendary figure.
So kind of like a greatest hits compilation, but for military strategy.
Exactly. It's possible the Art of War, it's like the combined wisdom of a bunch of different strategists, all gathered under the name of one almost mythical figurehead.
But there has to be an argument for Sun Tzu being a real person, right?
Yeah.
What do the people who believe he existed say?
Well, they say the Art of War, it just feels too real, too grounded in the nitty-gritty of battle to be some purely theoretical thing. The insights are just too sharp, too practical. It doesn't read like some general sitting in his palace, theorizing about war from afar. It feels like the observations of someone who's actually been on those front lines, someone who's seen the chaos firsthand.
Yeah, there's something about that been there, done that kind of voice that's really convincing.
For sure. And on top of that, there are other early sources that do mention the Art of War, even if they might not be quite as reliable as the Zhuozhuan. It's not like the trail goes completely cold, you know what I mean?
Okay, now this is getting interesting. We've got ourselves a real historical head-scratcher here. But before we jump into more of this evidence and theories, there's this really fascinating detail, something in the Art of War itself that we need to dig into.
Yeah, there's this one part in the Art of War that mentions this whole conflict, right, between the Wu and Yu states. And the thing is, that whole conflict didn't really heat up, like explode into all-out war until after the time Sun Tzu was supposed to be advising the Wu king.
So hold on. It's like the book itself is hinting at stuff that happened later in Sun Tzu's career, if he was a real person, I mean.
That's exactly what some scholars think. That this little timeline hiccup, it could be why the Zhuozhuan, which focuses on this earlier period, doesn't mention him at all. Maybe Sun Tzu's influence grew over time, like maybe his writings started circulating more widely, and that's how he became more well-known.
Huh. That's a really interesting point. It's like we're trying to put this historical puzzle together, right?
Yeah.
And this detail, this Wu-Yu conflict thing, it might be like one of those key pieces that can totally change how we see the whole picture.
Totally. It just adds another layer to this whole mystery surrounding Sun Tzu, And whether he was a real general or more of this, like, legendary figure, there's no denying that the Art of War came out of this crazy, turbulent time in Chinese history, the Warring States period.
Oh, man. That period has always blown my mind. Just brutal from what I've read.
Brutal is an understatement. We're talking constant warfare, alliances changing faster than you could keep track of, kingdoms battling it out for total dominance, treachery, backstabbing, it was all part of the game. And to really understand the art of war, you have to understand the world it was born into.
So basically, To survive in the warring states, period, you had to be adaptable, you had to be cunning, probably a little ruthless too.
100%. And that's exactly what the art of war is all about. It's knowing your enemy inside and out, anticipating their next move before they even make it, and then striking at their weak points. Deception, surprise, those were essential tools. Everything in that text, it came out of this need to survive in a world where war was always knocking at your door.
Which makes you wonder, if these strategies were so essential back then, in ancient China, are they still relevant now? I mean, can you take the lessons of the art of war and apply them to a modern battlefield? Or even like to the business world, right?
That's the crazy thing about this text. Sure, the battlefields might look a little different these days, but those core principles, the strategy, the planning, understanding your opponent, those never go out of style. The art of war isn't just about winning wars, it's about achieving your goals, whatever they are, even when you've got people or circumstances working against you.
So even if we never really figure out who Sun Tzu was, we can still learn from what's written in the art of war.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think that's what I find the most fascinating about all of this.
It's almost like, not knowing for sure who Sun Tzu was, it makes the art of war even more intriguing.
Yeah.
It's like we're forced to really confront the book on its own terms, to grapple with the ideas, the strategies, without needing a biography or some like definitive historical context to tell us what to think.
100%. It really speaks to how powerful the ideas in the art of war are, that they've resonated for centuries, regardless of who actually put pen to paper,
Right. And I think that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. I mean, we explored the historical debate, looked at the arguments for and against Sun Tzu, but in the end, the art of war kind of stands on its own, doesn't it?
It really does. Makes you wonder, though, what if there's more out there? More clues just waiting to be found. Lost scrolls, battle records, even something like archaeological evidence that could totally change how we see Sun Tzu's life and his whole legacy.
That's what I love about history. There's always that chance of uncovering something new, something that can turn everything you thought you knew on its head. So to everyone listening, if you're going to try to prove or disprove Sun Tzu's existence, where would you even begin? Like, what kind of evidence would you look for?
Would you start by, I don't know, maybe searching for ancient battlefields, hoping to dig up artifacts, something with the mark of this, like, strategic genius on them?
Or maybe, like you said, dig through those old texts,
Yeah.
hoping to find a hidden clue, some reference that everyone else has missed.
It's amazing to think about, that the answer to this ancient mystery, it could be out there. Maybe someone listening right now, maybe they hold the key to unlocking it all. But for now, we'll leave you with this. Next time you find yourself facing a challenge, some problem that requires a little strategy, think about the lessons of the art of war. Adapt, strategize, and never underestimate the importance of knowing yourself and your opponent inside and out. Who knows, maybe you'll even tap into a little of that Sun Tzu wisdom yourself along the way.